Hi, and thanks for tuning in. Last week I had the privilege to be with my family for an early celebration of my wife's birthday. We drove several hours and camped at a lake we've been going to for decades. Once unpacked, we spent some time fishing and having fun. I found myself in a chair, staring out at the lake for hours at a time. These days, everybody's working hard, and I knew I needed to recharge. So, there I sat, fully immersed in a drone stare, punctuated by a grandchild bringing me a tangled fishing line or needing a fresh worm on the hook. What's interesting is that there was no real focal point to my thoughts. I just needed to breathe and stare out at the water. Thoughts of God's goodness would flood my mind, and then those would give way to thoughts of God's protection. I would feel joy as I looked around and saw my wife, kids, and grandkids roaming around the campground. I thought about how God's mercy and forgiveness continually bless me. Then I thought about how God has his hand on Bethel Church. All this kind of felt random until I heard Pastor George's message on Sunday. That's when it hit me. Everything I thought about for the last week pointed me toward the preeminence of Jesus. Honestly, it had been a while since I simply thought about Jesus without asking anything from him, and it was truly refreshing. On Sunday, Pastor George reminded us that we need to be grounded, and that reminded me of a story. An acquaintance of mine had been offered a national position, and that position would mean leaving the local church and moving across the country to the denominational headquarters. Seeking counsel, he went to a friend who was the pastor of a pretty large church, and this is what the pastor told him. I was a pitcher in high school, and my pitching coach would always tell me, every time you throw a ball, make sure your front foot is planted in the dirt. That foot being rock solid will provide you with a stable throw. Without that stability, you're going to throw wild pitches. That pastor then told my friend, for you, the stability will be to make sure that you always have one foot firmly planted in the local church. Without that stability, you're apt to sit in a corporate office and come up with wild ideas that have little relevance to the churches to which you minister. My time staring out at the water reminded me that without one foot firmly planted in the person of Jesus, I'm apt to come up with some clever ideas that have no relevance to the Bethel Church family. And as much as I depend on myself, I remembered that I bring Jesus joy when I give him my dependence. It was a great time for me to touch base with my Savior. Pastor George reminded me that Jesus is the head of the church, and he didn't create us only to abandon us, but instead he walks with us every day. None of us is ever truly alone. Jesus continually offers us forgiveness and mercy, and as we put our faith in him, he helps us grow more and more in our relationship with him. I feel refreshed and once again grounded in my faith. I'd like to suggest that all of us make it a point to stay in touch with the person and deity of Jesus. For, as Pastor George said, Jesus is central to our faith. Thanks again for tuning in. God bless.